Welcome to Interviews from Mexico. I'm Laura Carlson, and I'll be your host as we look at cutting-edge issues with the men and women who know them best. Here on Telesur.
Muy buenas tardes, compañeros. Orgullosamente vengo representando aquí a nuestra policía comunitaria. ¿Cuántos niños, cuántos jóvenes, cuántas personas muertas cada día? Ya basta, vamos a decir basta a esto.
Violence has surged again in Mexico, and there's a major discussion about what to do about it. The government proposals focus on massive militarization and a police crackdown. But there are other approaches. Today on Interviews from Mexico, we're going to talk to a co-founder of the Indigenous Community Police and a former political prisoner. Stay tuned. To talk about issues of crime and persecution here in Mexico, we're very pleased to have with us today in the studio Nestora Salgado. Nestora, thanks for joining us on Interviews from Mexico.
Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I admire you so much, Laura, your work, and thank you for the opportunity. Well, here we are. We're still fighting. We're still struggling. I'm still working for the defense of my, now the legal case, which still isn't over, and that's it. And with all the other necessities of life that exist in Mexico, right, we're still raising our voices here.
Nestora is a former political prisoner here in Mexico, a co-founder of the Indigenous Community Police in her native Olinalá in Guerrero State, and a human rights defender. Nestora, your case was world famous and still is world famous. You were arrested in August of 2013 and remained in prison until March of 2016. Could you tell us a little about this case? Why did the government consider you such a threat?
Well, first I think that I'm sure that the reason I was imprisoned was because the government doesn't like to see us get organized. And also because I dared to denounce concrete specific cases of forced disappearances, of murders, of rapes and all that. I feel like I touched a very raw nerve. And that was what led to my incarceration, because as I was recognized by the United Nations, it was an illegal, arbitrary arrest that never happened. We had total recognition as the community police under Law 701 with the indigenous people. They should never have arrested me. And here we are. I'm free now because I didn't commit any crime.
Let's tell the audience a little bit more about this case. You returned to Olinalá. Did you decide to take on
the experience of leaving your country, your community, your state, to migrate to a country like, for example, the United States, gives you another vision of life, of what is happening in your country or in the state, in this case, in my community. When I came back from living a life with, another lifestyle, with a lot of security, mainly, you come back and the first thing that you find, the first thing that comes to your attention is the poverty. That kind of poverty that you can get used to, that when you're living it, you can feel it. When you're living it day to day, the murders, the disappearances, you make it all part of your life. You start considering it as something normal, and then that's what's happening to our people. They're accepting it. They're accepting this way of life. And I think that when you come back and you see that, you say, this can't be happening. These human rights violations are huge, and we can't allow them to continue. So it's like I got the plan to go back, to try and do something. First of all, I started trying to help with the community in the little ways that I could, because I'm not a millionaire. but good intentions do exist, like defending peasant farmers, for example, that started before I was well known, like I am now as Commander Nestora and as Salgado. I had worked with them for years, bringing them what little I could, helping them to seek legal assistance, medical assistance, and bringing them things from the United States, little things, no. So I got more involved with the society, with the community, but as I get more involved, I realized that there were even worse things going on, and that people are not speaking out. They keep their mouths shut because they know that justice doesn't exist, and that they don't have the money to buy it. Because if they had money to buy it, then they might be guilty of something. But if they have the money to pay, they end up being declared innocent. And that's what our peasant farmers, our poor people from the countryside, that's what they don't have. So they don't have access to justice, they don't have access to education as they should. It's a right. They don't have access to healthcare. So you start to see all this and you say, wow, this in movies, how they suffer in countries like Africa, Haiti, the hunger and the poverty, so many needs, the violence. But I started to realize, I really found out that we're living it in Mexico too. Yes, but we have other visions, and that's why what I got involved in this.
So you were going back and forth between living in Guerrero and living in Washington State in the United States when you made this decision that the situation was so critical in Guerrero that it was necessary to form some other kind of police force, a different system of justice. You talked about a system of justice where people have to pay for justice, which is really not a system of justice. What were the threats that were so grave in Guerrero that made you decide that you had to take this step?
Well, first of all, what happened in my town, in the community of Olinala, was that the people just got sick of it. It was something that developed because of all the breakdown, all the corruption, so much insecurity, the murders and kidnappings. And it just ended up getting out of control of the government itself. So that was when we went in to take control of our community, because the government wasn't doing its job. We had a municipal police force, we had the state police, we had, well, even the army too, because they've been out in the streets for a while, and you could see the crime was going down. You could see the disappearances even now, and how people fire their guns right in front of the municipal police and all that, and no one was doing anything about it. It got out of control. So when we went in to organize the people, they responded, because it's really hard to get people to react, to organize a way to act in an organized fashion, to protest in an organized way, to demand our rights, demand justice, but as organization. It's what we started doing. So from there, we started organizing, and the community police was formed. The community police that years ago had existed, but that had been disbanded for fighting the good government armbands, according to them. But, well, then we formed the community police, and that was when we took power. And let me tell you, it's been a fantastic thing for me, because I can tell you that our people, our men mostly, determined to defend their women, their children, they took up arms. It's true. They took up arms, but in order to defend their own lives. We weren't declaring war on the government. We weren't against the government. We weren't paramilitaries. Nothing of that sort. Guerrillas, even less. We were men and women defending our right to life. The right that everyone has to walk comfortably in the streets. So when these guys decided to do it, crime went down. Something that the army, with their war tanks, with their world-class weapons, hadn't been able to control. And I'm not going to tell you we wiped out drug trafficking, because drug trafficking, as long as there are consumers, we're not going to change it. We're not going to stop it, right? But crime, where they're killing people, where they're kidnapping people, that's another matter. The fact that your children can be disappeared and you end up finding the cut up bodies, when that happens, we're already talking about a country full of terrorists, of terrorist because for me this is terror. It's sowing terror.
You were telling us, Nestora, that the crime rate actually went down after the community police began to operate in your town. But after that, you were arrested. So what happened? Why was the government not appreciative of these grassroots efforts?
Well, the tremendous collusion that exists between the government and the drug traffickers. That's why. Because what country wouldn't like to control the sea, to get rid of crime? If we brought down crime, if we were reducing all of the insecurity that exists in our city and being able to control it, why wouldn't the government be pleased? Because it's what I was telling you. Why is it that the government hasn't achieved this? When you have the support and backing of the community, everything can change. When the people make a decision, then when they really add their grain of sand to change things, we can achieve things if we organize. So when the government saw that they couldn't go in and run things anymore, that they couldn't carry out their businesses anymore, that's when the arrest happens. Yeah, because we hit them where it hurt. We affected the mayor at the time, Eusebio González Rodriguez, the governor back then. I think that's what it was, no? Because my question is this: why doesn't the government like to see us organized? Why did they fabricate crimes and use against me the very institutions that are supposed to exist to protect us and to implement justice? They use these institutions to fabricate crimes. That's what happened. They framed me. Imagine Mr. Iñaki Blanco sitting there and thinking of how to fabricate a crime to throw me behind bars.
He's the state prosecutor who charged you. So you had a situation where there was actually active participation, business deals between politicians and security forces and organized crime. And they didn't like it when anyone came in and started to shake things up.
That's right. We proved it. We demonstrated. What was the reward for someone who defended life? For someone who defended the rights of human beings, the reward was prison. And the reward for those politicians was to receive promotions. The mayor is now a deputy. Yeah, so that's how the authorities are rewarded for all they're doing. And that's what happens to the people who dare to defend the common good. The only thing that we get is jail terms. How many political prisoners are there? Why are they behind bars? Because we have raised our voices. Not one of us should be there, and those of us who have gotten out, it's because they couldn't prove any of the crimes that they fabricated against us. We got out, got our freedom, but the question is, how many more are there? Are we going to leave them there? We can't.
That's the other thing I wanted to ask you about. So we have a situation, human rights defenders go to jail, and corrupt politicians are promoted. And you went to jail. And you were in jail for 2 years and 7 months. And it was largely a movement outside of prison to pressure the government that finally got you free. Now, you could have gone home. You could have had a peaceful life with your family, but you didn't. You immediately took up a campaign to free the rest of the political prisoners. Why did you decide to do that?
Because of my own experiences, because after being in prison and knowing I was innocent, I was overwhelmed by the fact that I wasn't the only one. The knowledge sat heavy in my heart that I'm not the only one, that there are more, and that all of these soldiers who are locked up need to have our support. We have to work to free them. With all of this experience I've had of reading the accusations against me that claimed I was a kidnapper, that I was a murderer, that I was a member of organized crime, all of that, and I asked myself, really, is that me? But when have the people mobilized to defend a killer like Zeta, a criminal like that? When have you seen the people defend someone like that? The people backed me up, my people who knew me, so that was good. They did that for me, and they helped me defend myself, and they gave me the opportunity to get a lawyer and all that. But imagine all the poor peasants who can't pay for a lawyer. Imagine those poor people who have had drugs planted on them, guns planted on them, and who are wrongly accused of something. They don't even have enough money to pay a bail payment of 5,000 pesos. And let's talk about the political prisoners who have been accused of terrorism. Now they're accusing people of terrorism, they're accusing them of organized crime, of who knows what else. It is the government's line, because it's a tragedy. If things were really done according to the law, I would have gotten out of the first 72 hours. But because the government had this line, imagine, I got out based on the same evidence that I had when they took me in, but I had to wait 2 years and 7 months to be released. So all of our people, all of our fighters and defenders, many haven't had such a powerful campaign behind them like the one that developed to support me. That's what I want to create. We want to reach out to the heart of every citizen to say that we can't allow our prisoners to remain behind bars. And they are our prisoners because they have defended us. They have defended our rights. And they have defended our lives. They have defended our air, our water, our land. And we should be saying, well, if you've been defending us, we have to do something for you, right? How can we allow that they're still locked up?
There's so many there that are forgotten, that really don't have a voice. And for you to stand up and use this voice that you created, not only nationally but internationally, to speak out for them is a very brave and admirable choice. In fact, in this campaign, we mentioned that you're a migrant, you live part-time in the United States and here in Mexico, and it was actually an international, a binational campaign. Why did you decide to take this tour also to the United States?
Well, because I think that criticism from the international community hits a little harder. It's more hurt. Breaking the media siege in Mexico has been very difficult. But if we do it from outside the country, if we have support from other countries, it's like we can do it. We can raise our voices higher. Because it's what I've been saying. I am the voice of those who don't have a voice. So if we're going to the United States, to Europe, and we can speak out from there, it will reach more people, right? My goal is that more people know about this, that we are able to really rescue these people and also fight for our rights. We can't let ourselves get used to living like this. Mexico is going through a difficult moment, and we can't accept this because it's only going to get worse. Violence is going to rise to another level, and if we don't eradicate, we don't stop this now, we're going to learn to accept this, and then we'll accept the next level of violence.
The last part of the conversation was very strong. We talked about the crisis here in Mexico and the need for people on every level to do something, and especially given a situation that you've described very clearly of collusion and corruption within the government and within the communities that so many of us live in. In that sense, you made the decision to stand up. And another thing that's interesting about your case is that there are very few commanders of the indigenous community police, although it exists in several communities in Guerrero, who are women. Have you encountered specific obstacles being a woman leader of the police?
First of all, yes. It was hard because since the state is a little, well, very misogynist. Well, all of Mexico is very misogynist. And they don't really allow women's voices to be heard. So they've been like, you belong in the house, you should be taking care of your kids, you should make food for us, right? They haven't left a place for us. So when they see a woman who speaks out and is imposing, except to a certain extent, I'm not really trying to impose anything. I'm just seeking a dialogue, right? So I took a path of dialogue using words and saying, well, things don't have to be this way. We can organize and look for different ways to live. It was a huge obstacle because in the villages, most people, when you talk about indigenous people, or when you say we are indigenous people, no one wants to recognize it out of fear of discrimination. Many people say, no, I'm not indigenous. And they also say, well, Nestora has light skin, she's not indigenous, she doesn't have the features, but I am indigenous. And I don't need to dress up in a huipil, which are very beautiful, but I don't need to just dress up in the traditional clothing of my region to be able to say that I am indigenous. You see, I'm indigenous because it's in my blood, but also, who cares if I'm not indigenous? We are fighting for our lives. And that was one of the obstacles that, well, first of all, we had conflicts with the people because they said that we're not indigenous. That's a great blow. And then being a woman, and then when we had 250 police in our unit who understand what's going on, we still had to fight, so they respect you. And they looked at me as kind of strange, but I demonstrated to them that respect can be earned. And I think I earned it through work, not through anything else, through work.
What words of advice would you give other young women in Mexico who are facing those kinds of obstacles in their communities and as well from the government?
Well, it's very complicated. I think that this issue is for me, it's very complicated. There are many young women who want to stand up for each other, teach each other that the struggle continues. It's very important to include young women. There were a lot of women in our group supporting us, and I felt that this beautiful thing that we are building, that they've been calming down a lot. Because before they sent the military after us, they locked us up. It's very well, we want this to rise again.
We're at a critical point here in Mexico now. There's the internal security law where they're talking about the only solution basically to this crisis of violence that we're seeing in the country is essentially to militarize it, to create a legal framework for the army to remain in the streets. You, in your community, have shown another path. Do you think these are two contradictory models, and what do you think about the law?
All this with the interior security law, we, the people, know, those of us who already have the experience of suffering under militarization, of how the military has been harassing us even without the interior security law. Imagine what they could be doing with the law. But well, I think that in our experience, we can say that this isn't the path. This is not the right path to put the military in the street. If they've been pushing us down like this, if they've been abusing our rights so much, the few rights we have left, they've walked all over them. Imagine with all the power what they would do. And we have demonstrated that they haven't been able to fix anything in the country. The crime levels just go up. They haven't changed anything. They could fill entire jails and they wouldn't even have enough jails to feed all the people. But how many people are going to be locked up? How many people will be tortured? How many people will be, they're going to abuse people's human rights. So I think that this is something that for me it's very important. And I call it the terrorism law. We can't live like that. It would be better, I think a better proposal would be to organize ourselves, really to have more information from the communities, how to train, to tell the municipal police, but more than anything else, to make sure that the law is respected. If the law isn't respected, there won't be anything. If laws aren't respected, if there is no justice, nothing will change. We have to start there.
What we're seeing right now is that the conflicts are intensifying and we're coming into an election year, which means there's even more interests at play. Related also to this issue of control of territory that you mentioned, who runs the businesses, including the illegal businesses that pass through here. What do we have to do to prepare ourselves for this period that's coming up?
I think that we are in a very important moment, a crossroads for us to start getting organized and preparing ourselves to be ready to take action and act as an organized people. Because we can't allow this. What they want to do is to get ready for us, to fix it before it's broken, to prepare themselves for what is coming, what they're planning or deciding to do. So I think that as a community, we need to organize ourselves. But it can't be just words anymore. It just can't be words. We need actions. And to say that we're ready for action, really ready for action, ready to take the step, not just to keep talking, but to think about what we're going to do. Now, the question is, how are we going to do it? And that's the challenge, to forge the path to stop these impositions. I would say that we need to inform our people now, since there are many organizers and defenders, and there are many collectives and many people fighting, that we should inform our community so that we can tip the scale. Because we can elect a president, a woman or a man, but she should be empowered by the community. It's like, I would put a clear example with the community police. If the community police didn't have the support of the people, it's useless. And the same is true for a president. If they're unempowered, if they don't have the weight of the people behind them, they won't be able to do anything. And they won't do anything for good for us. Nothing will change. The community has to be organized to demand of the new government how we're going to do things, and also to stop some things and to say, listen, you're not fulfilling your promises. And we're here to call attention and to say, listen, you said that things were going to be like this, and now we are here to demand that you follow through. I'm sorry that this is going to be this way, but we're going to be here. Hopefully, we are able to organize a group of people or the state so that we can bring the power to the kind of person who really be able to change the country.
Grassroots organization.
Everything is through organization.
To the crisis that's coming up. Nestora Salgado, we've run out of time. Activist, community organizer, it's been an honor to have you here on the show. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much for the invitation. Thank you to everyone who is listening.
And thank you. We'll be back next week on Interviews from Mexico.